Hello, my name is Quentin Moran. I'm a 22-year-old Arizona State University graduate with a degree in graphic information technology. I am currently pursuing a master's degree from Arizona State University in graphic information technology, and I plan to graduate this December. I used a variety of software to create and develop the content showcased in this portfolio. I used Apple's iMovie to create the narrated portfolio you are watching right now. I will discuss the applications used to create each of my portfolio pieces later on in the video. Design theory is essentially the science of the underlying mechanisms of design that seek to explain why certain things in design are the way they are. Coming from a graphic information technology background, I had already explored and studied these concepts thoroughly throughout the course of my college education. That being said, GIT is more focused on the technology and business side of design rather than the theory and academia that makes that technology work. As such, I found it enlightening to take a class in a more design theory/academia-based major such as technical communications. It's amazing what you can learn by examining something you think you're so familiar with a different perspective. Taking this technical communications class has allowed me to revisit the concepts of design theory and gain new insights by applying them in the projects featured in this portfolio. My first project in this class was to design a logo to use as my personal branding. Since this would be my personal branding, I wanted it to represent me, my passions, and my aesthetic. I really enjoyed exploring the outdoors by hiking, mountain biking, and traveling. As such, I wanted my logo mark to showcase my love for the outdoors while still maintaining a simple geometric look that fit with my aesthetic. My initials are Q and M, and an M kind of resembles the shape of a mountain. So I started off sketching some ideas that tried to incorporate the M as a mountain. After sketching out many different versions, I finally found a few that I thought might work well. I then used Adobe Illustrator to turn my 3 favorite sketches into basic black and white vectors. After digitizing and receiving feedback on my 3 favorite concepts, it was clear Design 1 was going to work the best. I then spent some time experimenting with different line thicknesses and padding on the design, before finally settling on my black and white logo comp. I used the interrelationships of form design theory to inform my final logo design, in which the Q and M form a union, creating a larger geometric shape that is the logo. The design was amazing. By using simple geometric shapes, I was able to convey my initials and an image of a sunset. The last step was to add color to the design to bring it to life. Given the design was made to represent a sunset, I wanted to use the colors present in a sunset to further strengthen that imagery. I sampled color from a dozen or so images of sunsets I had taken over the past few years and experimented with many different combinations. I liked the way some of the more natural color combinations looked on the logo, but they lacked the contrast that would be needed from a logo designed to be used on many different types of backgrounds. As such, I started to think more abstract about the sunset color gradient and settled on a deep blue for the outer lettering and a punchy red/pink/orange for the inside of the logo. These colors didn't look as natural as some of the more complex sunset gradients I had experimented with earlier, but they still strengthened the imagery of the sunset while still maintaining the contrast needed to be an effective logo. The next assignment I completed in this class was a newsletter layout designed to showcase my understanding of the concepts of typography, balance, and alignment. To create the newsletter, I first sketched out some potential layouts on paper. After sketching out the layouts, I used Adobe InDesign to transform each of my 3 layout sketches into black and white comps. I personally preferred the third design, as I thought the way the lines at the top of the newsletter seemed to almost flow out of the logo mark in the center of the lines was pretty neat. I chose to use the typeface phenomenon for the headings on the newsletter, as I felt the modern sans serif font worked well as a display type for the newsletter. For the body copy, I chose to use Google's open source sans serif typeface, Roboto, as the hard edges on the thinner Roboto body copy contrasted well with the strong rounded edges of the heading font phenomenon. Ensuring contrast between heading and body copy makes a newsletter more readable and legible, as I discovered by learning about the design theory of type relationships. I then posted my comps on the discussion board to get some feedback from my fellow classmates. Just as I suspected, almost all of my peers preferred the third design as well. However, they did have a few suggestions on how to improve the design that I would use to perfect the final black and white comp. My classmates liked the clean, simple, professional look of my design, but thought there was too much text in the articles. Although this was only placeholder text, I saw what they were saying and agreed I should try to remedy the problem. One of my classmates suggested splitting the text into columns to make it easier to read. I tried that, but it just made the design look a bit too busy for my liking. Another classmate suggested that I try adding jumps to the end of articles to facilitate the shortening of the articles. I really appreciated the recommendation and decided to try out the jumps in my design. After adding the jumps, I was able to increase the leading of the article text to 30 point and decrease the length of the article, resulting in a much cleaner and more legible article. The professor also recommended that I decrease the size of the stroke on the newsletter header to match the border of the aside. I wasn't too sure about this modification because my goal was to make the lines in the header seem like they were flowing out of the logo mark, which is why I matched the stroke thickness of the header stroke to the stroke thickness of the logo type. That being said, the professor required all recommendations she made to be acted on, so I decreased the stroke thickness anyway, and it didn't end up looking that bad. After revising my final black and white comp, I now had to add color and fill in the placeholder text with actual articles about my career goals and how visual communication affects our life. Coming up with the color scheme I used for the newsletter was easy. I just used the colors of my newly designed logo mark as they worked well together, matched the logo mark, and had enough contrast to work well on a printed document. After applying the color scheme to the newsletter, I filled the placeholder text with short blurbs about the articles, titles, and added jumps to the end of each blurb where the reader could finish reading the article within if it was an actual newsletter. The last assignment in this class was to redesign a poorly designed homepage of a website all the way to full color mockups. I was especially excited about this particular assignment as I had done something very similar a few semesters back in a user interface/user experience UI/UX class on the author Suzanne Collins' site, and thought it would be interesting to see how much better I could complete the redesign of the site with all my new knowledge and skills I had gained over the last year or so. The last redesign I did of Suzanne Collins' site was decent. However, it was one of my first times doing such a task, and I thought I could do much better now that I had improved my wireframing and mockup skills over the last few years. To begin the redesign, I first created 6 potential layouts for the homepage of Suzanne Collins' site using Adobe XD. I found the practice of rapid prototyping extremely useful and effective, so much so I might even venture to say that it was one of the most useful things I discovered while taking this class. By quickly throwing together 6 potential layouts, I was easily able to visualize and choose the most effective of the wireframes. After thoroughly reviewing all 6 potential layouts, I selected my 3 favorite layouts and continued developing them into more robust mockups featuring images, icons, and color. I decided to stick with the same color scheme I had developed for use in my original Suzanne Collins website redesign, as I felt the complementary blue-gray and yellow-gold color scheme worked well and accurately embodied the feel of the original website and their most popular novels, The Hunger Games. The color scheme also applied the design theory discussed in the North American visual semantics that I had learned about in this course. After turning my 3 favorite designs into mockups, I posted them to the discussion board to review feedback from the professor and my fellow classmates. My classmates and professor all agreed the mockups did an excellent job of taking a text-heavy design and making it clean and fresh. This was because I had recognized that the formal, copy-heavy layout discussed in the layout design theory earlier in this course did not fit with the vibe I was trying to portray with my website redesign. They did, however, suggest that I decrease the amount of text on the mobile viewport to make it easier to read, as well as decrease the size of Suzanne's portrait, as the books are the real star of the show. The professor also recommended I move the portrait to the left on mockup 1 for better balance. There wasn't an exact consensus on which of the 3 mockups was the best, so I just picked my personal favorite, mockup 1. After selecting mockup 1, I used the feedback I received from my classmates to shrink the size of Suzanne's portrait and add the jump to the text on the mobile viewport. Finally, I switched the portrait and the main paragraph as per the professor's suggestion.